With an open mind. Dhamma Talks by Sayadaw Jhaneyya. Dhamma Talk 5. On the Mind. Do not follow the desires of the mind, but also do not suppress or torture it. The mind takes pleasure in unwholesome objects, and will never free itself from sensual pleasures by following desire alone. If one wishes to understand the mind, one must listen to Dhamma talks and practice. The nature of the mind is difficult to train. It is accustomed to roaming among sensual objects and is quick to react. One cannot train the mind lightly, one must apply greater effort. Practice must be forceful and consistent. Always examine one's own mind rather than the minds of others. One must teach and exhort the mind through samatha and vipassana. This is the middle way, which neither follows desire nor suppresses it, avoiding both hedonism and extreme asceticism. Otherwise the process becomes short-circuited, failing to continue through contemplation of arising phenomena. For example, when greed arises and indulgence follows, imagination chases after desire and defilements increase, as is commonly seen in the modern world. You must contemplate all arising mental states from behind, through sati. Watching from behind is sati, knowing their nature is panna. At first, paramatha and conceptual panati objects are mixed together, and one sees mainly the concept. For example, when noting the arising of the abdomen, one may see the abdomen itself, and is not yet free from the concept. Sati becomes strong through noting conceptual objects. Virya and samadhi follow behind it, and also become strong. See Mogok Sayadaw's talks. Panna follows later. It does not arise instantly. It also depends on the type of object. Panna follows behind saddha, sati, virya and samadhi. These are the 5 faculties and powers as they develop. The contemplative knowing mind stays momentarily on the contemplated object. It is something like this. Water waves are moving up and down, while a frog sits on a lotus leaf that rises and falls with the waves. For example, when contemplating the rising and falling of the abdomen, the lotus leaf is the abdomen, the wave is the air element, and the frog is the contemplative nana. With sufficient contemplation, the special knowing of perception arises. It does not appear as the abdomen to yogi, rather it is known as the movement of air, seeing its true nature. The helpers of ignorance and volitional formation are doubt and heedless. The helpers of discernment are proper attention and effort. Knowing the nature of phenomena comes from noting with sati. With good sati, virya and samadhi, discernment follows behind them. One must understand the nature of the mind and how it needs to be trained. In insight contemplation, it is very important to contemplate the mind. Even though one may contemplate other objects such as form and feeling, more emphasis must be placed on the mind. The mind always intrudes and disturbs the yogi from the beginning, through the middle, and to the end of the insight process. When contemplating feeling, the aim is not to eliminate or make it disappear, but to understand its nature. The same applies to knowing the mind. The mind is like the eye and finger that look at others and point outward, yet must itself be understood. Noting and sati. Through noting and sati, the yogi knows the nature of the mind. When insight knowledge becomes mature, one may no longer be able to note in the same way. At that time, only watching and observing remain. This has its own level that follows the noting stage. In the Mahasi system, the progression is from noting to observing. The noting and observing level becomes pure observing. You cannot skip or pass over this stage. Even though people perform merits, if these are not accompanied by sati and panna, they can still give rise to dukkha, suffering and problems. There are many examples, both in the time of the Buddha and among modern Buddhists. For instance, in the name of compassion and love, people may act blindly, without sati and panna, thereby creating many external problems. Reflection on oneself and others. A Dhamma reflection based on a Dhamma talk by Sayadaw Uttamo. Na paresam vilamani, na paresam katakatam attanova avekaya kataniya katani, ca. Focus. Not on the rudenesses of others. Not on what they've done or left undone, but on what you have and haven't done yourself. Dhammapada verse 50, translated by Thanisaro Bhikkhu. This is a valuable teaching in the Papavagga, the chapter on flowers. See Pavayaka Ajivaka Vattu. There are 3 important points in these verses. 1. We should not focus on the rudeness of others. These are verbal and physical actions. 2. Also do not focus on what others have done or left undone. 3. Rather focus on what one has or has not done oneself. The above 3 points are related to mental action, mano kamma. Points 1 and 2 concern thinking about others, while point 3 requires thinking about oneself. Humans always perform actions through body, speech and mind. These actions can be wholesome or skillful, and unwholesome or unskillful. These actions, or the law of karma, are very important for one's suffering and happiness. Among these actions, one becomes increasingly extensive and complex. For example, bodily action, right-pointing arrow, verbal action, right-pointing arrow, mental action. Killing a human being, right-pointing arrow, frivolous talk, right-pointing arrow, unwholesome mental actions. There is much to contemplate here, from social levels to international levels. We can apply the 10 wholesome and unwholesome courses of action. Killing a human being is very rare in most societies, except in the USA because of gun laws. However, frivolous talk happens very often and everywhere, especially in the media such as television, the internet, radio, smartphones and so on. There are many examples. Most human mental actions, thoughts and thinking, are related to unskillfulness or unwholesomeness. This may be one of the main reasons beings are mostly reborn in the 4 woeful planes of existence, apayas. With wrong views come wrong thoughts, all kinds of thoughts, which lead to wrong speech and bodily actions of all kinds. Therefore, Dharma education, or Buddha's education, is the noblest and best education for human beings. Only through the Buddha's teaching can humans have right view and follow the right path. Otherwise, humans usually hold many kinds of wrong views and follow the wrong path, constantly increasing kilesas and harming themselves and others, even nature. Why do we suffer in our minds? Because we think for suffering. But if we think for happiness, we will become happy, as in the Dhammapada story of verse 50 about the rich lady. We have wasted our time by thinking about others, and created much unskillfulness than developing merit. We have neglected our precious time and opportunities by thinking about others. We do not know how to use our time well, or how to think for ourselves. In the world, we are not alone. We live among our surroundings and other people, such as family members, friends and others. Therefore, apart from oneself, all other people are others. It is very important to know how to think and behave toward oneself and toward others. This is also very practical in daily life and lived experience. Therefore, the most important point here concerns one's own true happiness, how to have proper, appropriate and wise attention in all situations. This protects oneself and also protects others. and vice versa. This is also related to directing oneself rightly, as taught in the Mangala Sutta, which describes the most important blessings or protections in this present life and in future lives to come. The well-known Burmese monk, Thapyakan Sayadaw, instructed us to follow these teachings and practice accordingly, as taught in the Ambalathika Rahulavada Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 61. The essence of the instruction and practice is this: before engaging in mental, verbal or bodily actions, we must first reflect on whether the action will be beneficial or harmful to oneself and to others. Mostly when we focus on others, kilesas increase. When we focus on ourselves, kilesas decrease because knowledge arises. To support these points, I would like to refer to two Jataka stories. Jar 459 Pandita Jataka and Jar 490 Panchupasata Jataka, both found in Volume 4. To focus on oneself is to understand oneself. This is Dhamma practice. To focus on others is the way of the world, which leads to dukkha, because we become lost in the world. The Buddha taught 10 reflections for monks. Among them, there are 3 reflections that relate to everyone, and we should often reflect upon them. These are: I must be separated from everyone and everything that is dear and agreeable to me. I am the owner of my actions, karma. I am the heir of my actions. I have actions as my origin, actions as my relatives, actions as my refuge. Whatever action I do, good or bad, that I will inherit. How am I spending my nights and days? These reflections should be contemplated again and again in our daily lives. They lead us toward wholesome directions. If we add another 2 reflections, we will have 6 in total. I am subject to aging. I cannot escape aging. I am subject to illness. I cannot escape illness. I am subject to death. I cannot escape death. See Sutta number 48, Things, Book of Tens, and Sutta number 57, Themes, Book of Fives, both in the Anguttara Nikaya. Dhammapada verse 50 can be related to the group of princes to whom the Buddha addressed his teaching. They were searching for a prostitute. This is an example of focusing on others, and on the external world, which most worldly people do. It is like a mad person collecting rubbish and thinking it is treasure. They met the Buddha, who admonished them that the most important search for human beings is not to search for others, but to search for oneself. To search for others increases defilements. To search for oneself leads to true happiness and peace. Therefore, to search for oneself is a noble search or quest. This is also a very rare duty in the Buddha's dispensation, Buddhasasana. Nobody wants suffering and stress. Everyone wants happiness and peace. Thus, this is an important duty that has 2 stages: to know oneself, and to care for oneself. This is the end of dukkha.